All right, guys, we are live episode 15 here in the deep end. This is the second time that we have gone live. I think we did it earlier this month, like on the 3rd or something, a couple weeks ago. And it was a lot of fun the first time. So we thought we'd bring it back around for the second time. Looks like we've got about 10 people, 13 people now here in the stream so far. And real quick, before we continue on, guys, any investing questions or comments or anything that you want us to address here in this episode, just let us know in the live chat and we'll get to them. Ari does have a couple of topics for us today, though. So I'm gonna pass the floor over to you, my man.
First of all, it feels great to be on the deep end, as it always is a phenomenal feeling. But I've been thinking about a lot of things. I'm in the midst, for anybody who doesn't know, of actually taking my Series 7. So a lot of studying and just like head in the books nonstop. I think my whole day is actually turned into just head in the books of studying, and a great problem to have. But it really made me think of, if anybody out there has heard of Alex Hormozi's, The Lonely Chapter, where he talks about, being in this space for a X period of time, and you have to be there in order to achieve the goal that you want to achieve. And that period is going to require you to essentially lose something, right? Sacrifice something, whether it's a friendship, a trait, right? A past trait. It's just like a part of your former self. It's basically going to have to die, right? Get shut off. Okay. And, I personally, I feel like I've experienced a lot of lonely chapters, currently going through one, whether it's studying through Series 7, career stuff and investing in the goals and all this. And I want to talk about, this lonely chapter as it relates to finance and as it relates to investing, because I feel like, and Ryan, I'm going to kick it over to you in about 20 seconds. I feel like when we're on this journey of financial freedom, we do need to hone in on like certain aspects of our life, take control of them, and start to really cut away at the old once were, to become who we need to be. And the person that we need to be in order to achieve financial freedom is actually entirely different than the person we are or the person that we were. And so I want to ask you, Ryne, on your journey so far, how have you changed?
Wow, gosh, we could probably spend the whole hour talking about that. Let me think about it for just a moment. I would say, okay, so I'm going to try so hard not to go off just into left field with this, because this is a really good question. It could be a very in-depth question. I would say that, okay, I feel like I want to answer this in kind of two parts. Number one, like how learning about investing has, I've changed just from learning more about investing, and also, outside of the knowledge gained, maybe behaviorally, how I've changed as an individual from being on this journey. Just starting with learning more about investing, I think that I've changed in just going through the experience of being in the market. I think I've been able to develop more patience, more wherewithal for things not going your way, because as we've certainly experienced so far this year and other times as well, things don't always go your way in the stock market, or things in life don't always go the way that you want them to. In fact, they rarely do. Things are always messy. They're always chaotic. And it's just something that you have to deal with. And so I think investing has been a good vehicle to have direct experience learning about that, and also learning to be okay with that too, and navigating it, and knowing at the same time that even though things, it sucks when things don't go your way, and as you're going through it, it seems like the end of the world. In the grand scheme of things have a way of working out. So I think that's another lesson learned from that. But I've also learned about other things like accounting and finance, and I've got to learn about a ton of different industries. So I like to think that overall I've hopefully become just a wiser individual being on this journey. Um, that's one side of it. On the other side, I think that investing and putting so much emphasis on planning for my future and my financial future and working toward financial freedom, I think it really helps put things into perspective. Really helps you put helps you put what's really important into perspective. Um, I've become initially, like, when I didn't, and I still make a decent okay living, but like when I first started doing this stuff, my income was very, very low, and so I had to sacrifice spending in other areas to um actually have money to invest. And so that teaches you just to be okay with, I guess, wanting what you have instead of spending money on things that you want and don't already have. um and that's something that's grown over time too. Like, the deeper that I get into this stuff and the more that I see results in my portfolio, the less things that I want, and the less kind of meaningless spending that I want to do. And I think that's been a very good and a very important lesson to learn. I think that actually a lot of us investors here, all of us watching, feel that to an extent, because one thing that it teaches you is that the most important thing that you can have is control over your time. It's your freedom. There's nothing more important to that than that. And when you get to the root of why we're doing this, it's to acquire that in full, And I think that's been one of the biggest. I think it's been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, especially comparing my thoughts on that and how I bring that into my life, comparing that to, just how I see other people around me, not necessarily doing that. I definitely am seeing, I'm definitely seeing a difference between those two things, and then, not for good or not for bad. Don't really have um, any real opinion about that. I guess it's just something that I have noticed. But to close the book on this, those are the few ways that I've really felt a change in doing this. It's all been good though. Like, there's not been one bad negative change that has come from investing. It's only been positive. It's only been a positive experience and a positive thing to get into, which is why it's just so good for anyone to start doing. It really is. Sorry,
100% agree. No,
tangent over.
no, look, I agree. I think investing is for everybody, and everybody should be doing it, whether people enjoy it or they don't. It's a must.
What about
You
you,
know, and,
man?
dude, there's like so many. There's been so many changes, but if I had to say, in relation to this lonely chapter, and I really have taken a liking to the whole gist of what it really means, like the lonely chapter, and forgoing, giving up and sacrificing in order to go up. I think that's necessary for growth. And I think as it pertains to investing, definitely something I've given up over a decade now has been the mindless spending of thinking that I can afford things when actuality I cannot. I remember back in, well, it was freshman year of college. We my buddies and I went on a cruise, and it was a spring break cruise, and it was wild and crazy memories, and all this just ridiculous shenanigans going on. And I had such an epic time. And then sophomore year came around, and I was like, let's do it again, and and so the boys and I got back on another cruise, and it was the worst experience ever. And I share that only because my expectations were set so high from that first one, right? Really what I was chasing was that I don't know, that high, if you want to call it, right? That like crazy high experience when like you're just trying to catch the next thing, And I remember the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, one, I remember getting off the cruise ship and just saying, I should have invested all of that You know, like, like, why did I,
Even at that age, you were already thinking about this stuff?
oh yeah. Oh
Really?
yeah. You know, the biggest ROI was the first cruise because it was so fun. And I tried to relive that experience. And I think, what that even taught me was like, be in the first experience so you don't have to re-experience, so to speak.
Mm.
Because when you're in it, in the first go round, it's kind of like, even if I have a cake in front of me, just one piece of cake is going to be amazing. 2 or 3 is going to be like, okay, I'm stuffed and I feel sick. And so when I feel like, over the years, what I've been really able to do is recognize when I'm getting the second or third piece of cake. And then over the years, not only recognize it, but actually just stick to the first piece of cake.
Mm.
And that in and of itself has been a game changer. Because if I'm really in the first experience, or if I'm really in, you're a watch guy, right? So you buy the one watch that you really love, and then all the other watches are just, watches that are going to hang around because you don't really love them. And you can take all that money and put it into the market and actually grow something for your future self, in which your future self can say, thank you, Ryne, or thank you,
Yeah.
Ari. And, that's the sacrifice. That in of itself, not going for the second piece of cake or the third piece of cake, that's the sacrifice. And a lot of people don't learn that. And as I've, been on this journey, sacrificing in that capacity, I was with a buddy the other night, and he was telling me, how many restaurants he's been going out to every night of the week. And mind you, he doesn't have a full employment yet. And, I'm just keeping my mouth shut. But I'm like, man, what are you doing? Like, good guy, right? But like, what are you doing? You just can't. Like, go out maybe once a week if you feel that you really need to. But as for me now, understanding the real sacrifices, once you enter the quote unquote lonely chapter, it's like, what are you going to be really willing to give up to go up?
Dude, it's crazy. It's almost like these days, even just simple budgeting is putting yourself on a lonely path. No one does that. Like even just having let's forget about investing for a moment. Even just saving more than you're spending is such a foreign thing to so many people. And just in doing that, in forgoing, financing your Coachella trip, or like in my case, foregoing like the Tudor watch and instead just buying the Seiko, which honestly scratches the itch just as much. I'm wearing it today. Um, even just by making, just by doing that one small thing, just simple budgeting puts you on a lonely path. And it's such an interesting
Yeah,
phenomenon. And I
because
guess that's another thing that you really pick up on when it comes to investing in money and being in this is just how, shout out Morgan Housel, like just how much psychology and behavioral stuff goes into how we think about money and how we use it in our lives. But anyway, sorry, you were about to say something.
no, you brought up budgeting. The moment you bring up the B word,
The B
budgeting,
word. Yeah.
right? Like people get scared. That
Uh-huh.
you can't talk to people about their budget and their spending habits. Really, it's like, God forbid you're asking someone about their like sex life or something, right? Like,
Well,
whoa, right? They're
well, dude,
actually more open to talking about that
yeah,
than
yeah.
they are to talking about the
Yeah.
budget.
That's funny, man. And it's to your point too. Like you can tell people, you should probably stop smoking cigarettes. They're really not that good for you. You're like, hey, maybe you need to cut back on the drinking, but you still can't say, hey, I really think you need to watch your spending. I really think you need to tighten it up a little bit.
Maybe we should take a look at your budget. It's like, oh, you want to end this friendship now? Like
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
pretty much.
crazy though, and then when you really get down to it, like my budget at one point, I was just, what I also learned how to do is gamify. And I think gamification is
Yeah.
so important on this journey, because if you think that investing and saving and anything that's related is going to be this like amazing experience, you're wrong. Because you're going to really, the moment you start to get on this journey, you realize that it's sacrifices all day long. But the moment you then gamify it all, it turns into actually great fun. And this is now where like Warren Buffett, can come around. And it was never about the money for Buffett. It's the numbers. And that's the gamification.
Absolutely. It's kind of on a similar note. I was watching this Casey Neistat video. Casey Neistat?
Yeah, of course.
I was watching a video of his last night from, I don't know, a handful of months ago. And he was talking about like in life, there's so many hard things that happen in life. A lot of the stuff you can't really avoid. You can't really control it. Like, paying your taxes, health issues are going to come up. Stuff like that is inevitable. There's just going to be hard things that suck that come along. But there's also other hard things that for some reason or another you choose to do. And in this video, he's questioning why. Why, when there's so many other hard things that we can't get out of, why do we still choose to do all these other extracurricular hard things? And according to Casey in this video, he says it because it feels good. There's something about knowing that you've with all this other stuff going on, you still added more difficulty to your plate and you were able to take it on and succeed. And in the spirit of gamifying it, level up, and by forcing yourself to go through that. And that really, really applies here to investing, because I don't know about you guys watching. I don't know about you, Ari, but to me, like, it feels good. It feels good to see over time your portfolio value going up. It feels good to see your dividend income going up with each weekly or monthly contribution, knowing that you are, doing the hard thing and doing something that so many other people are not willing to do. Even just going back to simple budgeting, even just deciding to save an extra $100 a month and doing that, finding those small changes in your budget that you can room to areas to save, even just doing that over time. It's not easy, but man, it feels so good when you do it. It really does. And I think that's, if for no other reason, that's certainly a good reason to do something like this, because it's hard and you should do it. And you'll feel better, you'll feel accomplished because you're doing these things.
I want to add in like another layer to this, actually. With Casey's point, if we'll bring Casey into this. When we decide to add another thing to our plate, I'm just laughing at a comment. It's great. Ari needs a wife to help him spend his budget. It's probably true. I love it.
These
we're
live
looking,
streams,
we're looking.
That's the fun of these live streams, man. You get these responses in real time.
I love it. So going back to this added layer, when you start adding things to your plate, you got to be very careful, including a wife for that last comment. But when you start adding things to your plate, and because it's fun, you actually, from my experience, destroy the one or two things that you actually really want to accomplish. And I would actually make the argument that adding a lot of things to your plate because you quote unquote find it fun is actually fear hiding behind a smokescreen of justification. Because if I add 10 things to my plate, the one thing that I really want to do, maybe even need to do, well, I got 9 other things. I got to focus on all of this. And it gives me an out. It gives me an excuse not to go all in, as I always like to say, on the one thing or the two things. What did Warren Buffett always said, right? 100 things, down on the list that you want to do. And then circle the top 25. And then really, you're only going to do 5.
Yeah, it's that punch card. You have to think of it as if it's a punch card with, 20 slots or 10 slots or whatever it is. And he was talking about it in the context of like the number of holdings that you have in your portfolio. Every holding that you have is a punch card that you can never get back. You have to think about each holding with that type of permanence in mind. But it's true when you do make commitments to, reach for certain goals. because you're totally right. It gets to a point where it's just too much to juggle, and that's obviously something that we need to be aware of when it comes to the things we're doing, for sure. But it, to your point, like, this goes back to your level of concentration in the portfolio. Getting rid of maybe like realty income, which for you was a side quest, paved the way for you to go more into your main objective and your main goal, which is to build up the Google or the United Health Group or what have you. So it just goes back to opportunity cost, which is another really important lesson that you pick up from investing.
What's interesting is I was going to spin into concentration
Uh,
because that's exactly where I was going. I'm happy you brought that up, because as I thought about, you talking about Casey and the quote and this, and I was like, there's been so many times in my life where I want to do everything, right? And the problem with that is sometimes I will try to take everything on. And in those time periods that I've tried to do that, I've learned the lesson that I cannot do that. I can do one or two things exceptionally well, and if I try to do 10 things, it's all going to be average. Same thing with investing. I can try to invest in 40 to 60 to 80 companies, and you know what? I'm going to end up with someone who has 40 to 60 to 80 companies, some people out there 100, with 2 shares receiving like 2 cents of a dividend and celebrating, which, okay, you made the 2 cents, cool. But wouldn't you rather, in my opinion, go all in on 5 to 10 whales, in your opinion, high conviction stocks, and be highly concentrated in that regard? Doesn't mean you're not diversified. It means you're highly concentrated on your all-ins, and now your dividend paychecks are bigger. You might get bigger swings depending on what you're invested into, and there's volatility. But I'll tell you what, Ryne, that approach launched me past $250,000. And, that's why when I play this game of concentration, it's not like I'm sitting here. We talked about this before, investing into like the penny stocks and, high risk, stocks that are out there. We're talking about blue chip players that are going to hopefully be around. I'm never going to say they're always going to be around, but for the long, long term. And so I have high confidence and high conviction in these stocks because of that. And that makes me question, okay, my goals and my strategy. I'm going to be a different investor in 5 to 10 years. In 20 to 30 years, I can't invest the way that I'm investing right now. So this game of concentration will change. Everything will change. The game will change. And I think that's so important for everybody, to really, when you start to analyze and question your approach and your investor profile, like what you're doing. If you're a dividend investor, I still say concentration is a great way to go. If you're a growth investor, concentration is a great way to go. And all the greatest investors out there talk about, becoming more concentrated on these high conviction stocks. Now, again, you go back to Casey's thing. You find it fun. Investing's fun. So let me invest in 80 to 100 stocks. Well, you're going to get the results of someone who's having fun. I'm not in the business of having fun, right? And as I take this, new approach, crush and kill the old ways of Ari, that first cruise Ari, right? Who's like, let me get the first cruise and try to have the same, let me top the next experience. It's not going to work, Same psychology here, or thought process. Oh, I found a Google. Let me find another Google and then another Google. It's like, no, there's one Google here. So let me find that, or I don't want to just Google it, but a tech stock, I don't know, a REIT, right? Like, let me find the best of the best and diversify that way, but focus.
Yeah, man, this is a really good topic. I hadn't heard about the lonely chapter from Alex, or yeah, that's what it's called, the lonely chapter from Alex Hormozi, but definitely a lot of application to what we what we do in and out of our portfolios. And I want to throw it back on the live chat. In saying all of this stuff, do you guys feel that you yourselves are on a lonely journey as an investor? And I mean, how do you sit through that? It can be. I mean, I know on my end, I have all of you guys here in the community, but outside of this, don't really have anyone who gets it. My wife does, but even outside of her, and she only gets it because she just hears it all day long, every day. But outside of this, it is a lonely journey, which makes me thankful to have this community here. So it's cool that we have each other. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about all of this stuff in the chat. If you have any thoughts on this lonely chapter, or even what you get out of investing, what you have learned from this investing experience. Be interested to get your guys' take.
It's crazy because I was listening, this morning. I woke up this morning at 4:30, start my day, coffee, studying. And then I just took, a solid break to breathe, and I put on Alex Hormozi's Lonely Chapter. If you just YouTube, Alex Hormozi, The Lonely Chapter, and it's about 8 minutes and something seconds. And I just sat there and I closed my eyes and I just deeply listened to this, like actually listened to what was being said. And I teared, Ryne. I deeply, deeply relate to Alex Hormozi's story, but I teared up because when you really are in like this lonely chapter, like pressed, right? You're going to come out on the other side a different person. But when he talks about like that necessity to like, people are going to doubt you basically he's saying when he's talking about others doubting you is you're not going to do anything in your first month. You're not going to do anything probably in your first year. But the problem is other people are counting in days and weeks and months, and you're counting in decades. So eventually, if you just remain consistent, you will get there. And I, being where I'm at now in my life, whether it's taking on the new corporate position and like that, it's amazing, awesome opportunities. The side hustles I still got going, like everything going on. And the road gets narrower in the best possible way. Because to be honest with you, I don't want to be on a road with 100 people. I want to be on a road with like 2 or 3 really solid individuals. So when it gets to this lonely chapter, and you said it best, right, with your wife, like she gets it. Like you can, if life just socked you in the face, Ryne, right now, like, I don't know, your portfolio just tanked. You can go in the other room, and she's in the other room, and just like
she's
stuck
with me.
Out.
Yeah, she's stuck with me.
Yeah, I mean, you're stuck. Like I got, like right now, it's just me, and that makes it intensifies it in a sadistic way. I like it, right? Because I'm like, I always say this to everybody I work with: the hardest thing any man has to do is nothing. It's just sit. Your stocks are tanking, but you have high quality companies. Sit. And the natural reaction is to react.
There's that quote, that quote, I don't remember who said it. But the quote is, most of man's problems come from man's inability to sit in a room and do nothing.
Yeah. Man, I said this to someone. Man, this is so good. I love the way this conversation's going, Ryne. I gave this little, powwow lecture speech, whatever you want to call it. And, this was the other week. We were talking about just this, like the ability to sit, and life is going to rock you. And I said, I just want you to imagine this. You're in a room. You're just locked down, chained to a chair, locked up. You can't move. And someone comes in and delivers the worst news of your life. Like life just pops you. But you can't move. You're just in this room. And the only thing that you could do is sit there and feel it.
Mm.
And then a moment later, someone comes in and gives you a different piece of news. And maybe it's a little more joyous and you kind of relax. And then someone comes in and gives you, another bit of news that is whacked. And you are just feeling life itself in all capacities. By the time you leave that room, doesn't matter if it was a week, a month, or a year, you will become a rock solid individual who can walk on a path by him or herself, knowing full well you will make it to the other side. That's been my experience in life, just being rocked over and over again. When I get to see the stock market swings, which actually is an epic segue to the other message I was going to bring to the table here. I'm not rocked by that. Are you kidding me? I'm fueled by it. So check this out. I made a video the other week. It was one of the dividend stocks to buy videos. And someone said, "Sorry, not in any buying mode at this point. Way too much uncertainty and not much of a reason to believe that the bottom is even close." Now, I'm going to ask you your thoughts here, but my thoughts are this. First of all, dollar cost averaging is always the way to go, in my opinion, because you'll never really know what the market's going to do. But when there's uncertainty, when you're getting rocked by volatility or life, that's the go time, my friends.
Yeah, I don't know if I could add anything to that because that's exactly it. Volatility, it's, it brings some discomfort, but it can create some really great opportunities. And that's just when it comes back to knowing, is this volatility like this big fluctuation in the share price of whatever company I'm looking at? Is it happening because of something that's fundamentally going wrong with the company? Or are there bigger external factors at play that maybe are not as much of a cause for concern as the share price movement is making it seem? It's really, it's as simple as that. If you can answer that question, then that'll tell you how best to proceed, I think.
Sit.
Yeah. So with that said, I think
sit.
by doing so, you can create some certainty in the face of uncertainty. A bit more confidence and conviction, knowing that fundamentally things are still firing on all cylinders. If that's true, there's the certainty that you need right there. Don't worry about the share price. It's noise. It's not necessarily signal. It can be signal, but when you look at what's going on right now, I mean, let's talk specifically about tariffs. That's that and maybe tensions between the White House and the Fed right now. That's causing a lot of this stuff. And I don't know, personally speaking, that doesn't make me feel any type of way. We've seen similar things before. Like I said earlier, it's always worked out. And if you can look at your positions and know they're still okay, like they're still rocking and rolling, I don't know. That's all you should focus on.
I'm going to bring this back to personal accountability and responsibility. And I want to bring it to accountability and responsibility because someone mentioned 08 and 09 in the chat, and someone else mentioned COVID. I'm just here to share that in these times of uncertainty and volatility, pandemic, no pandemic, housing crash, no housing crash, I'm just going to be really direct in saying this. The people who got screwed, for the most part, were people who had no idea what the heck was going on. They were taking massive risks in certain capacities. And so the people who didn't get screwed and the people who actually made a great fortune during these times, and I'm not talking about the Wall Street execs who obviously made a great fortune in behind the scenes. I'm talking about anybody who had their head on the swivel and was able to invest capital and find high quality companies with strong fundamentals. Anybody who had maybe a savings of 6 months to a year You know, that when the pandemic hit, there were people who freaked out, and then there were people like me and you, Ryne. I know what you were doing, buying, and I know what I was doing. I remember a call I had with my sister, and I go, I'm pissed I don't have more to invest, right? Like, that's the deal here. Everybody has to get their finances in order. It's what we first started actually talking about the moment we jumped on. It's so important. And if you don't have your finances in order, if you can't talk about the B word, I mean, if you can't talk about a budget comfortably, I don't think you have any business investing. That's my take. Like, if you can't go out in the street right now and say, you know, you run into an old pal and they're talking money and finance and this, and like you're like, what is going on? Right? Like, maybe, oh, but I'm invested in, because some people do this. I'm invested in Bitcoin, or I'm invested in, you know, whatever it is, because I heard. It's like, really?
You know, it's funny, man. So pretty much that same exact situation. I have a friend who was telling me recently that he just needs to be better about his like retirement accounts. He said, I really need to start like setting aside money in my retirement accounts. And basically what he was saying is I need to start investing. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's 100%. And the good thing is you know, I just gave him the spiel. The good thing is you can do it completely out of sight, out of mind. Just go into ETFs, just, you know, just the S&P 500, call it good. You can set aside even $5 a week. And, you know, we went through the whole rigmarole. There was the pushback on that and yada, yada, yada. And then later on in the conversation, he told me like, yeah, I did end up putting like a couple $1,000s in this crypto thing a while back. But, and I'm like, oh my God, how in one breath do you say you don't have money to invest, or like you need to be, you know, start putting money away for your financial future, but you don't have the money for it right now. But then just a few moments later, you're throwing 4 figures into XRP on a random Tuesday because your coworker told you to. It's like, man, it's just goes back to just how much behavior and psychology and the fear of missing out specifically plays into this stuff. It's just such a good lesson. Here's another thing, going back to the very start of this conversation. What have you learned? Another thing is you get a really good feel for, you just get exposed to a lot of different types of people, and you get to see how different people react in certain situations. As someone who puts out content on this platform and spends a lot of time in my comment section, and even you guys, I'm sure watching, you guys read comments too. You get exposed to a lot of different types of people, and it's a good teacher for how people respond to different situations. You definitely learn a lot about human nature.
Ryne,
yeah.
If I could say anything right now, it's that everybody wants to be rich. Nobody wants to do the work.
I don't blame them,
Everybody
man.
wants to be the CEO. Nobody wants to do the work.
I don't
have to
blame
be
them.
honest, man. I blame them. I want to tell you, man, there's nothing more than I love than the process. I love it. I love it.
Dude, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I'd be so stoked. Just rich overnight. The cool thing about that is, like, I know where I would put it. I know exactly how to allocate it to where I'd never have to worry about money again. I would love it, man. I'm not gonna lie. That would be awesome.
Is it sadistic for me to say, like, I'd rather just like, even if I die and I never hit millionaire status, like, for what never happens, I lose everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather go out that way, because for me, I find the greatest joy and the greatest meaning in the process. That's why I'm sadistically saying, like, I love the lonely chapter, man. The only thing, like, I'm focused on right now is like the Series 7 to the next step, and like just total tunnel vision on something. And again, it's like the sacrifices of not going out with friends, right? And like just putting this off. I was actually supposed to be in India and Thailand as we speak, but I have a goal in mind. So I'm like, you know what? Let me earn it. So when I get to India and Thailand and wherever else I'm going to go, I earned it. And that's why I can't get down with, like, I'm not saying if someone handed me $1 million, I'd be like, no, right? But I already know that if someone handed me $1 million, it wouldn't feel like anything. Like, I wouldn't find the satisfaction of the million.
I definitely would. I would feel a huge weight off of my shoulders. And the good thing is, like, because investing is an infinite game,
I love how
the pro
different.
the pro I know. Well, that's the beauty of this thing, man. The process doesn't stop. Like, you are still investing. The difference is you just took a huge shortcut. And now, instead of at least in my case, instead of going from like $100,000 portfolio to $1 million, and that's like the journey, you go from probably a couple million to, man, however big you can build it from there. I just think it would be awesome because, well, like I said, it just you are there. You can be financially free at that point, and that's really what we're working towards. But I'm kind of with you in the sense that I don't feel like my life would change all that much. Maybe we probably would buy a bigger house. We'd keep this house as a rental, but I don't see it getting incredibly lavish, because that's when people who win the lottery get into trouble. They spend it all. Cooper said with $1 million, Ryne still wouldn't buy Rollins. Out of
The moment
principle,
I saw that, I just couldn't
you
hold
know what,
back.
Cooper, here's what I'll do. If I win the lottery, I'll get it here on the record. I'll buy 100 shares of Rollins at least.
Ryne would send you a Venmo, Cooper, so you can buy Rollins.
Yeah. But out of principle, I couldn't do it. That's it. That's right. Real quick, man, I hate to cut this conversation short, but we've got a couple really good comments pertaining to just what we've talked about so far. And we also have a few really good questions I think we should try and get to before the top of the hour, if you're cool with it.
Let's roll through them.
Okay, so going back to what we were talking about earlier, Christian says, in regards to the lonely chapter, he says, I feel lonely. My best mate told me the other day to stop investing and go party and, basically live like I'm in my 20s. I didn't listen to him, but it makes it disheartening to stick to my plan. Why can't I do both in my eyes? I think that's a really fair point, and you totally can. You can have that balance. And this is where it just all goes back to budgeting, because you can budget for both. You can budget for your living expenses. You can budget for your investing dollars. You can budget some fun money. My wife and I, we budget like a travel fund that we set aside every month. And we use some of that on our recent staycation here on the Las Vegas Strip for celebrating our 1-year anniversary. So you can do all of these things, but it just go back to having a budget. Don't let anyone tell you what you should or shouldn't do, or how you, and I guess that includes us as I'm saying that. This is your life. And there's no rules to this. So you live in the way that makes the most sense to you, and the way that you think is going to help you live the best and most fulfilled life. Sorry.
Right. Can you put that back up on the screen? I just want to make sure. There we go. We're in the deep end, Christian, so I'm going to give it to you how I see fit. Your best mate is, in my opinion, not your best mate. Ooh. And, I'm just going to be real. Anybody who's not going to push you forward and get you to your next level, even if they don't push you forward and get you to your next level, but you openly share with them the goals that you have in mind, they don't have your best interest in mind. And so I'd be very cautious of the people that you put in your circle. And again, this is from just personal experience with me. It was like the moment my life changed, whether it was financially, whether it was career, like you want to start hanging out with the millionaires. You want to start going to some good dinners. Like, about 9-10 months ago, I actually had dinner with a billionaire. But I wouldn't be able to get to that dinner if I didn't change everything there was about me years before, and, leading to people who are chattering in millions and billions. They're having different conversations than people who are partying at the clubs and bars and whatever else. That's not to say that people at the clubs and the bars, you can't do that stuff. I'm not saying just like chuck all your friends, But I am saying if that's your best mate and you're like, hey, man, I got this goal. And he's like, push that aside, man. You're in your 20s. Only live once. YOLO. I would just be
Yeah.
like, either there's the door for you to walk out of or there's the door I'm about to walk out of. That's just me.
Yeah. And Christian, at the end of the day, you're making decisions that may not be bearing much fruit today. Like Ari was saying, a lot of people think in days or weeks or months, but you're thinking in decades. And I guarantee that give it 10 or 15 or 20 years. I think your friend will change his tune. Really he'll have no other option to, because as we've talked about so many times, investing and planning for your future is something that everyone has to do at some point or another, or else, you're the only other option is just to work until you die. And nobody wants to do that. Everyone gets to a point in their life where they decide, I don't want to do this forever. Life is, there's more to life than this. And I think that the fact that you're already thinking that way is going to put you light years ahead of people who advise against investing and tell you to just live for today. But you can totally do both. I do think that there's room for both. But anyway, this next one on a kind of a similar note is from Mila, who says,
just one more thing here.
Okay.
Christian, I just want to officially welcome you to the real lonely chapter that perhaps needs to start for you at this point.
There you go.
Welcome, my friend. Go ahead,
Owen. So this next one's from Mila. Says, yeah, I don't have anyone who understands. And I often feel like my partner is a complete liability to my goals. She's wonderful, but my journey has ground to a halt along with my monthly progress. Ooh, I don't know. What do you think about that one, Ari?
Put that back up on the screen. I'm going. I don't, for me, I'm just direct. I work with a ton of people, and I think when it comes to the closest people in your life, in your circle, those people, wife, best mate, whatever, however these people are got into our inner circle. There's our circle, and then there's the inner circle. These individuals who are closest to you better be in the trench with you. That's what I'm going to say. They better be fighting the same war that you're fighting with you. Sometimes they're going to be fighting it for you, and sometimes you're going to be fighting it for them, especially when it's a partner, a life partner. And, a part of the reason I am single now is because I'm in the trenches, baby. I need someone who's going to be in the trenches with me. Yeah, 110% in the trenches with me, because life is going to happen over and over and over again. And when it happens, and if we're just talking investing here, well, we can keep it to even just that. You feel that this individual is a liability, right? Like, let's just say, I don't know the whole situation, but let's just say you're bringing in a ton of money and this person's a spender, like a super spender. Well, that's never going to work, because you're going to be bringing all this money and exerting all this energy trying to build something. And as fast as you're trying to do that, it's just, there's a leak in the boat. So again, I'd be very cautious. I'm not here to say, just after listening to the Deep End podcast, you go to your partner or best mate and say, hey, I was just listening to this podcast and this crazy goon on YouTube just said this, and so I'm out. Right. But really think about it. If you are saying your partner is a liability, would you say that to their face? Do you have that type of relationship? Because that's what someone in the trenches will be able to do. Hey, I'm recognizing that your spending habits are a little out of whack. We're not going to hit our goals. Can we talk about this?
Yeah.
I think that's totally.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair approach. And that actually, sidebar before I continue on, never in a million years that I think we'd be getting into relationship counseling here on the Deep End. But man, this is why this is why these live streams are so much fun. You just never know which direction they're gonna take. But I was gonna say that too. I don't know what conversations you guys have had about this stuff, but I think that's the best place to start. If this was me, that's how I would approach it. I would just share my concerns and reiterate the things that are important to me, and try and lay it out as cohesively and coherently, which for me is a struggle, as coherently as I can, while also trying to be delicate and sensitive and know that the person on the receiving end of that, unfortunately, like, probably just doesn't know any better. I think that's true. Like, when it comes to a lot of people and their spending habits, a lot of people just honestly don't know any better. Um, and it takes people time to get there. I truly think that. And so like I said, I don't know what conversations you guys have had about this stuff, but that would 100% be the best place to start. And if you don't feel like you can have those conversations, I also think that tells you something right there.
I also think it's a matter of a strike system, because again, when you are extreme, right, and it's just like you give someone one shot, that's going to be on you, and you're going to live with regret, I feel. But when you put together kind of this strike system, this progress plan, and you explain, like, this partner that's in your life or this friend, and you're like, hey, these are my goals. You have to recognize when someone in your inner circle just needs to understand you better, or someone in your circle is actually making the leak in your boat into a hole, right? Into a massive gaping hole. And there's a difference. And I think, a lot of times people react too quickly. I will not, leave a relationship or, a job, whatever it is. I won't move until I have just about all the cards that I can possibly get on the table, until I know that this other individual or this company or whatever, even in stock, until all the cards are out on the table on my side and their side, they all need to be there. And it's at that point in time when we're both looking at a table full of cards saying it's time to walk away because you're not playing the same game that I'm playing. You're not taking this seriously. I've given you 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever, opportunities. And, I want to get in the same page. When you give 100, you'll have no regrets. When you give 50 or 60, when you give 99%, you're going to have some second guessing questions and potentially some regret that will kill you. And I've learned that one as well, where it's like, these days I'm 110%. When I walk, I'm gone, because all the cards were there. And, it's never about, by the way, I saw also in the comments, someone, I think it was Christian, just saying, friend of 10 years and I can't just let them go. It's not about just letting someone go, right? It's not like one day you wake up, you're like, not your friend anymore, see you. Live with what I like to call an open palm. What comes, comes. What goes, goes. If you're on your journey, investing and saving and doing all the right things, and these individuals who are, palm of your hand, so to speak, don't want to hang anymore, let them go. Let them go. You're just growing.
Yeah, it's natural as you get older to, unfortunately, to grow apart from friends that maybe you grew up with. It happens to all of us, I think. And it's, it can be a sad thing for sure, especially when it comes to a friendship that has a lot of history, but you also can't force things. Like, you're on your own journey, that person's on their own journey, and hopefully those journeys are going in a similar direction, but sometimes they're going in complete opposite directions, and you can't fight that. It just kind of is what it is. And it's maybe separating yourself from that situation is not a judgment against those individuals, but it's also knowing, I guess having respect for your own time is what it is. And you're better off having,
self.
Yeah, and self. And you're better off in the long run having relationships that are, just going back to concentration, you're better off being more concentrated in your relationships and building deeper ones with individuals who are on a similar path that you are, or at least share the same values, because that's what it goes back to at the end of the day. And as you get older, I think those things become more important. It's not as important to you in your teens and probably early 20s, but as you get into your upper 20s and 30s and 40s, that it becomes impossible to ignore.
100%. Yeah, I'll be the first to, even just share it. And Ryne and I've spoken about this, but like, when I was going through my breakup, right? This is not to say that when you make a decision for your own self, because you respect yourself, you love yourself, you deserve to live the life that you're after, each and every person out there. When you make that decision to do what you need to do, it's not going to be easy. No, it's not going to be easy to walk away or to just stop hanging out with a friend of 10 years. You're going to have the memories. It's not going to be easy to, I was dating this girl for 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever it was. And no, it's not easy, right? There are plenty of nights where I'm like, you can listen to a song. Heck, I could listen to a song earlier today. Boom, I'm like crying, right? For like that split second, be like, wow, like, what? But you refocus. Who is in the trenches with you? Who is fighting the war with you? Who is going to help you get to where you need to go? And by the way, it's not just about you. You have a part to play in that relationship too. Where does the other person want to go? How do you both help each other to get to where you need to go? It's that classic quote, I'll work on me for you and you work on you for me.
Yeah, one that I always go back to when it comes to this topic is, I think it was George Washington who said, associate with men of good quality if you esteem your own reputation, for it is better to be alone than in bad company. Not that bad company is probably a bad way to put it, but it just goes back to values. People who have different values than you do. Well, with that said,
we got 4 minutes roughly. Should we run through? Like, you want to do a blitz 4 minutes?
Let's go. We got a couple rapid fire questions I think we can get to. This first one is for you from our friend Ron, who says, are you still loading up on Stanley Black & Decker? Is the dividend sustainable? Had it in the past and dumped it around 100. Thinking about it again. I don't remember you having Stanley Black & Decker.
Yeah. I bought. That's where I came up with my classic, famous catchphrase: Stanley Black will be back. And I bought Stanley Black back in like 2020, 2021. And I kept saying that Stanley Black will be back. Just give it the time. The interest rates are going to come down. And then boom, interest rates came down. The stock shot up. I made a heck ton of money on that. It was a swing trade in there. It was not a buy and hold forever type of deal for me. Just to answer this on rapid fire, I think the dividend will be sustainable. I don't think you need to worry much about the dividend right now. I think what you need to worry about is your own emotions and being able to sit out in that time, or asking yourself some deeper questions. Are there better opportunities right now than just, depending on how much money you're putting into Stanley Black and how long you're willing to wait on it? Are there better opportunities out there for you to invest into and make even more money? So I, the other week, told everybody here I was selling all out of Visa, and I did just that. And then guess who just bought back into Visa on the dip? I did. And then it's right back to where it was, so I made already money on that. Am I going to sell it right now? Am I going to go, trim it back out of my portfolio? Probably. We'll see by next week.
Yeah, I don't have just real quick on Stanley Black & Decker. This has never been a business that I've been super excited about. I think the pandemic was probably pretty good for them. But then they've really come back down since. It looks like, I'm looking at some of the stats right now. It looks like their payout ratio is about 75%. So there is a little bit of coverage there. And historically, over the last decade, it looks to me like the payout ratio has been kind of all over the place. We've seen it as low as about 30%. We've seen it in the mid 40s. In 2024, according to Seeking Alpha, it was 167%, which is obviously pretty concerning. But they had a really big earnings drop, looks like, these last couple of years. So I don't know.
Look,
part of me, go ahead.
You got to factor in what they do, and I think that's so important as we understand Stanley Black & Decker, and more importantly, who they supply. So a lot of people like to jump into Home Depot and Lowe's, which I totally get. Home Depot is supplying them, and with Stanley Black, the reason why I say it will always be back, top-notch brands I absolutely love, and then more than that, suppliers to Home Depot, Lowe's, and all the other home improvement centers. They're the largest tool manufacturer in the world here. Not saying that they can't disappear overnight. Anything's possible. I don't know, crazy Enron type of situation, whatever you want to call it. I think what we have to remain focused on, again, is that in-between time that you'll be in the gray area of like maybe not happy with it, and then maybe ecstatic with it, depending on this economic situation in the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah, I think that that will really paint a clearer picture for what certainly the rest of this year and possibly next year looks like for Stanley Black and Decker. Since 2022 or so, it looks like sales have been pretty flat, which just may be a result of macro stuff and also people getting their fill of tools and stuff like that during the pandemic. Um, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It seems to me that the dividend is at least safer now, though. They are a dividend king, from what I remember. So, they've been through tough times before.
146 years,
Wow. Of
according to
payments.
Simply Safe Dividends.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Good for them. Okay, so let's do one more question. Actually, this one comes from Savor the Skies, who says, "Hey guys, I am upset that the market is going up because all week when the market was down, I was so tempted to go out of my dollar cost average. How do you guys deal with?" I think he's asking, how do you guys deal with like this market that is fluctuating all the time? Like, how do you know when to start dollar cost averaging or stop dollar cost averaging? How do you deal with all of this craziness that we're seeing right now, specifically as it relates to dollar cost averaging?
Your answer is in the question itself. When you use the term dollar cost averaging, you dollar cost average. And if that's your strategy and your approach, have your set day, have your set amount, and dollar cost average. However, if you're trying to play the emotional swings of the market, use them to your advantage in the sense that right now, just think big picture. Don't deviate from dollar cost averaging, because that would be, I think, the most idiotic thing a person can do is time the market 100, try to time the market 100% and miss the entire opportunity at hand. But if we just look big picture, we understand that tariffs are a thing right now. We understand that, this whole 90-day thing with Trump and China is still in the picture. We understand that Trump is firing, away comments at Powell. Like, what are the things that are going to happen? No one knows. But what matters, in my opinion, is how news headlines are portraying everything and how the market's reacting to everything. So just take any day that Trump says anything, which is every day. So just be careful of what Trump says, because if last week he's firing off comments on Jerome Powell, and then Jerome Powell's coming in and talking about how inflation's popping back up, all of a sudden we get this opportunity. We get an opportunity. So dollar cost average, but when we get these little opportunities within the larger opportunity, I don't know, maybe add, buy another share or two of what you're already buying. But just know that we're very likely, in my opinion, to be in the rut of this market environment that we're in for some time longer. I would honestly say it wouldn't surprise me to get another, from this day, 90 to 120 days out from now, similar trading days. But when I think about 5 years and 10 years out and 20 years out, that's my golden opportunity now. It doesn't even matter what the prices are right now if you're a long-term investor. Of course, those nearing retirement have to play it much differently.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. Nothing to add, as Charlie Munger would say.
So let's do one more, but you take us out with that answer to whatever question we have here.
Actually, that was the last one that I have.
That was it.
Had.
That was
was
it.
it. Yeah.
All right, investors, we will end it here. And look, as we always share at the end of these calls, one, if you have questions, make sure you leave them in the comments, even though the chat's going to be closed, I think, right? It's going to be closed.
Yeah, drop us a comment below.
You're going to have an opportunity to comment with a question, or you can email us if you want to go old school. But definitely make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Join Ryne and I every single week here in the deep end. Things are only getting deeper as we go. As we can see, we're already talking about relationships this go round. So we want you all a part of this journey with us. Ryne and I are also, I think, blasting a lot out on Blossom, which is an epic community for all of us out there who feel like we're alone. Blossom has actually helped me realize there's a huge investor community out there. So Blossom is an amazing app for everybody who feels like they're alone and need a community. Ryne and I are on there, posting frequently. Join us there. Join us here. Until next week, investors, we will catch you all in the next Deep End Chat.
Yep. Thank you, guys. We'll see you in the next one.